Your emotions have more power over your life than you might realize, but they don't have to control you. Every time anger, stress, or sadness rises, it can make decisions harder and slow you down. The key is learning how to recognize what you feel, understand why it's happening, and respond in a way that keeps you steady and in control. You will discover practical steps to pause before reacting, speak kindly to yourself even when emotions feel heavy, and calm your body so your mind can think clearly. This guide will teach you how to focus on facts, not feelings, and choose peace over anger without forcing it. Imagine going through your day feeling clear, confident, and in charge, handling problems without being swept away by your emotions. By training your mind to control emotions, you gain freedom, resilience, and the ability to act with purpose. This is about taking charge of your life and making emotions work for you, not against you. Chapter 1. Notice what triggers your emotions before they take over. Every person, no matter how strong or disciplined, has moments when emotions try to take control. You know that feeling when something small suddenly feels so big you can't think straight. When anger burns, or sadness feels heavy, or fear stops you from doing what you know you should. That's the moment your emotions are trying to lead, not you. Controlling emotions doesn't mean pretending not to feel. It means being aware before they take over. It means noticing what is happening inside you the moment it starts. Because if you can see it early, you can manage it before it manages you. Think about your day. How many times do you react before you even realize why? Someone cuts you off in traffic and you get angry. A friend ignores your message and you feel hurt. A small failure makes you feel useless. See, these reactions don't come from what's happening, they come from how you interpret what's happening. Your mind gives meaning to events, and that meaning triggers emotion. The secret is not to fight your feelings but to understand where they start. The person who knows their emotional triggers controls their life. The person who ignores them is controlled by them. You have to slow down enough to notice. When your heart beats faster, when your jaw tightens, when your voice gets sharp, that's not random. That's your mind signaling that something inside you feels threatened. Maybe it's your pride, maybe it's fear, maybe it's the need to be understood. Every emotion is a clue, but most people move too fast to see it. They live reacting, not responding. They let the emotion hit first and think later. That's why they regret what they say, what they do, or the decisions they make. If you want power over your emotions, you need awareness before action. Awareness is the foundation of control. The moment you recognize what is happening inside you, you create a gap between emotion and reaction. In that gap, you have choice. You can decide to breathe instead of explode. You can decide to think instead of accuse. You can decide to pause instead of panic. It may sound simple, but it takes practice. The people who seem calm under pressure aren't emotionless. They've just trained themselves to notice early. They've built awareness through reflection and honesty. Start paying attention to what triggers you. Write it down if you have to. Notice patterns. Do certain people make you feel angry? Does criticism make you defensive? Does being ignored make you anxious? You can't control what you won't admit. The more honest you are about what moves you emotionally, the stronger you become. Because now you can prepare. You can plan your response before the emotion even arrives. You can predict your weak points and strengthen them. That's emotional intelligence in its real form. Not fancy words, just self-awareness in action. Think about a time when you overreacted and later thought, why did I do that? That's what happens when emotion blinds awareness. You can't fix that moment, but you can learn from it. Every emotional mistake teaches you something about yourself. The goal isn't to stop feeling, it's to stop losing yourself in feelings. When you notice what triggers you, you no longer walk blind into emotional traps. You start seeing them ahead of time. You become proactive instead of reactive. There's a difference between reacting and responding. A reaction is instant, emotional, uncontrolled. A response is thoughtful, calm, chosen. The more you practice noticing your emotions, the more control you gain over your response. It's not about being cold or detached. It's about being aware enough to choose wisely. That's strength. Not the kind that shows on the outside, but the kind that gives peace on the inside. You might be thinking, but emotions happen fast. Yes, they do. That's why awareness is so powerful. It slows time down. The next time something frustrates you, instead of saying or doing something right away, pause, feel what's happening inside you. Ask yourself, what am I really feeling? What just triggered this? That small pause can save you from hours or even days of regret. It's the difference between saying something you'll have to apologize for and saying something that builds understanding. It's not easy. At first you'll still get caught off guard. You'll still react before thinking. That's fine. The goal is progress, not perfection. Over time your awareness will sharpen. You'll start noticing things earlier, before they explode. You'll start recognizing that most triggers aren't about the present, they're about the past. Something that hurt you before might still live inside you, and every similar situation wakes that emotion up. When you know this, you stop blaming others for how you feel. You take back control because you understand your own emotional story. Controlling your emotions is not about being emotionless, it's about being emotionally mature. It's about saying, I feel this, but I decide what happens next. It's about being the driver of your emotions, not the passenger. Most people let emotions steer their day. If they wake up anxious, the whole day becomes anxious. If they wake up angry, the world becomes the target. But the ones who win in life have trained their minds to notice early, to reflect and to choose their path, regardless of how they feel. When you understand what triggers you, you gain emotional freedom. You no longer have to be a prisoner of your mood. You no longer have to let other people control your energy. Think about it. How many times have you given someone power over your day, just because they said something rude or dismissive? The moment you react without awareness, you hand them control. But when you pause, notice and choose your response, you take that control back. That's real power. Not shouting louder, not proving your point, but staying calm and centered when everything tries to pull you off balance. Start observing yourself during the day. Watch how you respond to stress, to criticism, to failure. The goal isn't to judge yourself, it's to understand yourself. The more you understand, the more power you gain. You start noticing your emotional triggers, like a scientist studying a pattern. And soon, instead of being surprised by your emotions, you start expecting them. You know what's coming, and you're ready. That readiness gives you control. You can train this awareness through small steps. When you feel anger, don't fight it. Just notice it. Feel it. Rise. Watch it. The moment you notice it, you've already taken the first step toward control. When you feel anxious, instead of drowning in it, pause and ask, what am I afraid of? The question itself brings you clarity. Awareness turns confusion into understanding, and understanding gives you direction. Sometimes, emotions will still get the best of you. You'll still feel overwhelmed, still say things you didn't mean. But every time you practice awareness, you get better. You get stronger. You build a calmness that others will notice. You'll start seeing the world differently. Not as something happening to you, but as something you can shape. The truth is, emotional control isn't built in one day. It's a lifetime habit. But once you develop it, you move through life differently. Problems don't crush you, they challenge you. People don't upset you easily, they teach you patience. Failures don't break you, they show you what to improve. You stop living on emotional impulse and start living with emotional discipline. Remember this, your emotions are powerful, but they're not always right.
They react fast, but wisdom comes slowly. The one who notices the emotion before it takes over wins every time. So when you feel that wave of frustration, fear or anger, pause. Don't fight it. Don't hide it. Just notice it. That moment of awareness is your strength. It's your mind saying, I see what's happening, and I'm still in control. That's where emotional mastery begins. When you train your mind to notice your emotions before they take over, you take back control of your life. You stop letting moods shape your decisions. You stop letting others control your energy. You begin to live intentionally, not emotionally. And that, more than anything, will change the way you experience every day. Awareness gives you peace. Peace gives you power. And power gives you freedom. The freedom to stay calm, to stay strong, and to stay in control no matter what comes your way.
Chapter 2. Learn to sit with your feelings instead of running from them. Most people spend their lives trying to escape how they feel. When sadness comes, they distract themselves. When anger rises, they explode or shut down. When fear appears, they run in the opposite direction. But the truth is, you can't heal from what you refuse to feel. The moment you start running from your emotions, you teach your mind that your feelings are something dangerous, something to avoid. And over time, that habit keeps you stuck in the same emotional patterns, reacting the same way to every challenge. Learning to sit with your feelings is how you break that cycle. It's how you grow stronger inside. Sitting with your feelings doesn't mean you enjoy pain or welcome sadness. It means you stop pretending those feelings don't exist. It's about creating space for them without letting them control you. It's about saying, I feel this right now, and that's okay. When you sit with your feelings, you stop fighting what's real. You give yourself permission to feel and understand. And understanding is what brings healing. Think about how often you distract yourself when you're uncomfortable. You reach for your phone when you're lonely, eat when you're stressed, scroll when you're anxious, or keep yourself busy when you're hurt. Those small escapes give short-term comfort, but long-term pain. Because every time you avoid an emotion, it grows stronger in silence. Emotions don't disappear when ignored. They wait. They show up in different ways later, through anger, anxiety, burnout, or even physical tension. When you stop running and choose to sit with your feelings, something powerful happens. You realize your emotions are not the enemy, they're messengers. They carry information about what matters to you. Anger tells you that a boundary was crossed. Sadness tells you that you've lost something important. Fear tells you that something feels uncertain. When you give these emotions space to speak, you understand what needs attention in your life. That understanding brings clarity, and clarity gives you control. But sitting with emotions isn't easy, because it's uncomfortable. Your mind will try to convince you to escape. It will say, don't think about it, or it's not a big deal. That's your mind's defense mechanism. It's trying to protect you from discomfort. But growth only happens when you stop avoiding discomfort and start listening to what it's trying to teach you. When you sit with your emotions, you don't need to analyze or fix them right away. Just notice them. Feel where they show up in your body. Maybe your chest feels tight, or your stomach feels heavy. Maybe your hands feel restless, or your throat feels dry. That physical awareness keeps you present. It reminds you that feelings are temporary. They move through you if you let them. The more you resist them, the longer they stay. Try this next time you feel emotional. Pause, breathe, and just stay with it. Don't rush to distract yourself or make it disappear. Ask yourself simple questions. What am I feeling right now? Where do I feel it in my body? What might this feeling be trying to tell me? These questions help you slow down and connect with your emotions instead of pushing them away. Many people fear their feelings because they think emotions make them weak. But emotional awareness is strength. It takes courage to face your own pain. It takes maturity to sit with discomfort instead of blaming others or numbing yourself. The people who seem emotionally stable aren't that way because they never feel pain. They're that way because they've learned how to process it. When you sit with your feelings, you learn self-control. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop letting one bad moment ruin your whole day. You begin to understand that emotions come and go, but you remain. You start to see that even your strongest emotions lose power when you stop feeding them fear. The more you practice this, the calmer you become. And that calmness isn't just peace. It's power. Your emotions don't define you. They visit you. They move through you. The problem is, most people build a home for their pain instead of letting it pass through. They replay the same event in their mind, hold on to resentment, or keep reliving the past. But if you truly sit with your emotions, you start seeing them for what they are, temporary states, not permanent truths. You realize you can feel anger without becoming an angry person. You can feel sadness without becoming a hopeless person. You can feel fear without living in it. One of the most important things to understand is that emotions are not problems to solve, they are experiences to understand. When you stop labeling your emotions as good or bad, you free yourself from unnecessary guilt. You start seeing emotions as signals, not threats. Every emotion has something to show you about yourself, about your needs, your values, your priorities. When you listen carefully, emotions become your teachers. There will be moments when your feelings feel too heavy to handle. You might want to shut down or escape again, but remind yourself that no emotion lasts forever. Even the hardest feelings have a rhythm. They rise, peak, and fade. The more you allow yourself to experience them fully, the faster they move through you. The key is not to hold on, not to push away, just to be present with what is happening right now. In those moments, your breath becomes your anchor. Deep breathing keeps you connected to the present when your mind tries to run away. Each slow breath tells your body, "I'm safe." Over time, this trains your nervous system to stay calm even when emotions are intense. This is how you build emotional stability, not by ignoring feelings, but by learning to be with them without losing yourself in them. When you practice sitting with your emotions, you also start developing compassion for yourself. You realize that it's okay to feel lost, sad, angry, or scared. You stop judging yourself for being human. That self-compassion is what helps you heal, because once you accept your emotions, you no longer waste energy fighting them. You use that energy to understand, to learn, and to grow. Think about how relationships change when you apply this. Instead of reacting to someone's behavior immediately, you pause and sit with what you feel. Maybe instead of shouting, you notice that you actually feel hurt. Instead of shutting down, you realize you just feel unseen. That awareness allows you to communicate clearly, instead of reacting defensively. Sitting with emotions doesn't just help you. It helps everyone around you. It brings understanding where there used to be conflict. The ability to sit with emotions is also what helps you make better decisions. When you stop reacting emotionally, you give yourself time to think. You stop letting temporary feelings lead to permanent consequence. You stop saying things you'll regret or making choices out of anger or fear. You start living with clarity instead of chaos. The truth is, emotional control doesn't mean not feeling. It means not fleeing. It means being able to stay present when things are hard. It means trusting yourself enough to face whatever comes up. When you run from your feelings, you stay emotionally fragile. When you sit with them, you become emotionally strong, because you prove to yourself that you can handle discomfort and still move forward. Your emotions are not here to destroy you. They're here to guide you. When you give them space, you'll find that even the painful ones carry wisdom. Pain teaches you what needs healing. Fear teaches you where to grow.
Sadness teaches you what you value most. Every feeling, even the hard ones, is part of your human experience. Ignoring them disconnects you from yourself. Facing them connects you deeper to your own life. Sitting with your feelings is a skill, and like any skill, it gets easier with practice. You'll start noticing emotions earlier. You'll begin recognizing their patterns. You'll see that some feelings return again and again, not because life is cruel, but because there's still something to learn. Each time you sit with them, instead of running, you move closer to emotional freedom. Over time, you'll find peace in the very places that used to make you anxious. You'll stop fearing sadness because you've learned that it doesn't break you. You'll stop avoiding anger because you understand where it comes from. You'll stop numbing yourself because you know you can handle what you feel. That's when life starts to feel lighter, not because it gets easier, but because you've grown stronger. So when emotions rise, stay. Don't rush. Don't run. Sit with them. Listen to them. Allow them. You'll be surprised by how much calmer you feel when you stop fighting your own emotions. Strength isn't built by avoiding discomfort, it's built by facing it with patience and understanding. The person who can sit with their emotions without running owns their peace, and that peace is something no one else can give or take away. It's yours, built from awareness, courage, and truth. That is how you begin to truly control your emotions, by learning to sit with them, not escape them.
Chapter 3. Talk to yourself kindly when emotions feel too heavy. There comes a moment in every person's life when emotions feel like they're just too much. You feel like the world is pressing down on your chest, your mind won't stop running, and your heart is carrying more than it should. In those moments, most people turn against themselves. They criticize, blame, and attack their own heart for feeling weak. They say things like, "What's wrong with me?" or "I should be stronger than this." But that's the moment when you need kindness from yourself the most. When your emotions feel heavy, the way you talk to yourself can either heal you or hurt you. When life gets hard, your inner voice becomes your most powerful influence. It can lift you or it can break you. Every word you whisper to yourself leaves a mark. Most people think strength means pushing through pain without feeling it, but real strength means standing beside yourself when things hurt. It's learning to talk to yourself like someone you love, not like someone you hate. Because if you're always harsh with yourself, you'll keep deepening your wounds instead of healing them. You have to start treating yourself the way you would treat someone who's struggling. If a friend came to you crying, feeling lost or afraid, would you say, "You're pathetic, get over it"? Of course not. You'd listen, comfort, and remind them that it's okay to feel what they feel. Yet when it's you, you speak with no mercy. You say words you'd never say to someone you love. That's why it's so important to change that voice inside your head, to make it gentler, wiser, and more understanding. Talking to yourself kindly doesn't mean ignoring your problems. It means facing them with compassion instead of criticism. When you're emotionally overwhelmed, kindness becomes the anchor that steadies your mind. It reminds you that pain doesn't make you broken, it makes you human. Everyone goes through moments when they feel lost, angry, or defeated. The difference between those who crumble and those who rise again often lies in how they speak to themselves in those moments. When emotions are heavy, your mind becomes loud. Every thought starts attacking you. You're not enough. You'll never get better. No one cares. These thoughts feel real, but they're not the truth. They're fear, wearing the mask of logic. And the only way to disarm that voice is by answering it with kindness. You say, "It's okay that I'm hurting right now. It's okay that I'm scared. I'm still trying, and that matters." That small act of grace shifts the entire emotional state. Because kindness creates space where harshness creates tension. You don't win battles inside your mind by shouting louder. You win them by softening your tone. Think of your emotions like children trying to get your attention. When you yell at them, they cry louder. When you listen calmly, they settle down. The same happens within you. The moment you meet your feelings with gentle understanding, they start to calm. That's why speaking kindly to yourself isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the mature response of someone who's learned that self-blame never builds peace. You might not realize how powerful your self-talk really is. The words you repeat to yourself become the beliefs that shape your future. If you constantly tell yourself you're not good enough, your mind will find proof of that in everything you do. But if you start saying, "I'm learning," or "I'm healing," your mind starts to focus on progress instead of pain. That change in focus slowly transforms the way you experience challenges. Because what you tell yourself during tough times decides whether you rise or break. There will be days when you don't feel strong at all, when tears come easily and motivation disappears. Those are not the days to push harder. Those are the days to be gentler. Say to yourself, "I'm allowed to feel this way. It's okay that I'm not okay today. I'll take it one step at a time." That's not giving up, that's taking care of your mind. Your emotions need patience, not punishment. You can't rush healing, but you can make it easier by creating a safe space inside your own thoughts. When you talk to yourself kindly, you build trust within. You start to believe that no matter how bad things get, you'll have your own back. That kind of trust changes everything. It reduces anxiety, strengthens confidence, and builds resilience. Because even when life feels uncertain, you know one thing for sure: you'll treat yourself with care. And that inner safety is what gives you the courage to face anything. There's something powerful about saying to yourself, "I'm proud of myself for making it this far." Those words remind your heart of every mountain you've already climbed. You've survived so many moments you thought would break you, and yet you're still here. That's not weakness, that's evidence of your strength. But too often we forget to celebrate survival. We rush past our progress and focus only on what's missing. Kind self-talk helps you slow down and notice how far you've come. Self-kindness also helps you manage guilt and regret. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has moments they wish they handled differently. But beating yourself up over the past doesn't change it. What heals you is learning from it and forgiving yourself. You can say, "I didn't know better then, but I do now," or "I made a mistake, but that doesn't define me." Forgiveness is the language of emotional freedom. The more you forgive yourself, the lighter your heart feels. Kindness to yourself also means being patient with your process. Healing takes time. Growth is not a straight path. It's messy, confusing, and sometimes painful. There will be days when you feel like you're moving backward, but talking to yourself kindly means saying, "That's okay, I'm still on my way." It means trusting that even slow progress is still progress. You can't force yourself to be calm, but you can create the conditions for calmness by removing harshness. Your self-talk also influences how you handle others. When you treat yourself with kindness, you naturally become more understanding toward people around you. You stop expecting perfection from yourself, and that makes it easier to accept imperfection in others. The peace you create inside your mind becomes the peace you give to the world. One of the most practical ways to speak kindly to yourself is through self-reassurance. When life gets hard, say, "I've handled hard things before. I can handle this too." When fear rises, remind yourself, "This feeling will pass." When you fail, say, "I'm learning something important here." These small sentences have power. They reprogram your mind to respond with calmness instead of panic. There's also a quiet strength in simply saying, "I'm proud of myself for showing up today." Even if you didn't do everything perfectly, you still faced the day. You got out of bed. You kept moving. You tried again. That deserves recognition. Most people wait for others to validate them. But the truth is, the most powerful validation comes from within. You don't need anyone's permission to be proud of yourself. You just need to recognize your effort. When you talk kindly to yourself,
You stop comparing your journey to anyone else's. You realize that your path is yours alone, and there's no timeline you must meet. You stop punishing yourself for not being where someone else is. You say, I'm doing my best, and that's enough right now. That kind of mindset creates peace in your heart, because you stop living in competition and start living in alignment. Emotional pain becomes easier to manage when your inner voice is kind. When sadness comes, you can comfort yourself instead of sinking deeper. When anger rises, you can acknowledge it without shame. When fear shows up, you can remind yourself that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward in spite of it. Every time you respond to yourself with understanding, you strengthen emotional stability. The world outside is already tough. People will criticize, misunderstand, and judge. Don't join them. The one place where you should always find understanding is within yourself. When your emotions feel heavy, remind yourself that being kind to yourself is not weakness. It's survival. You are not fragile for feeling deeply. You are alive. Your mind listens to everything you tell it. Speak words that build you. Replace I can't do this with I'll figure it out. Replace I'm failing with I'm learning. Replace I'm broken with I'm healing. Each time you choose gentler words, you send a message to your brain that you're safe, that you're growing, and that you're capable. Over time, this becomes your new default, self-compassion instead of self-attack. When emotions feel heavy, the goal isn't to escape them, but to walk through them with care. Some days you'll still feel lost, but the difference is, you'll no longer feel lost to yourself. You'll have a voice inside that says, I'm here for you, we'll get through this. And that voice will carry you through storms that once felt impossible to survive. Life will always bring moments that test your emotional strength. You can't control every situation, but you can control how you speak to yourself through it. Be the voice that encourages, not the one that destroys. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to keep showing yourself the same patience and love you'd give to someone else. Because when you talk to yourself kindly, you heal faster. You think clearer. You make better choices. You stop needing the world's approval, because you've already given yourself permission to be enough. And that's the kind of quiet power that lasts. So when your emotions feel too heavy, pause and talk to yourself as a friend would. Softly, breathe slowly, and remind yourself that this moment doesn't define you. You're learning, you're growing, you're still standing, and that's something to be proud of. The more you practice this, the stronger your inner voice becomes. And one day, you'll realize that your kind voice has become your greatest source of peace. Because no matter what happens, you'll know how to comfort yourself, and that's what real emotional control looks like.
Chapter 4. Stop reacting fast and start understanding what you really feel. Most people don't realize that their reactions often say more about their confusion than their clarity. When something happens, the first instinct is to react, to snap back, argue, defend, or withdraw. It's automatic, emotional, and fast. But reacting quickly rarely solves anything. It usually makes things worse. Because most of the time your first reaction isn't about what's happening right now. It's about everything that has ever hurt you before. When you react too fast, you don't give yourself the space to understand what you're really feeling. You end up treating the situation as an attack instead of a message. Emotional control begins when you stop rushing to respond and start pausing to understand. That pause between what happens and how you respond is where real strength lives. Most people skip it. They feel something and immediately act on it. Someone says something rude, and they raise their voice. Someone ignores them, and they shut down. But that's not awareness. That's habit. It's not emotional intelligence. It's emotional autopilot. If you want to grow, you must learn to notice what's happening inside you before you let it spill out. Because the truth is, the first feeling that hits you is rarely the real one. Anger might hide disappointment. Frustration might hide fear. Irritation might hide sadness. When you take a moment to understand what's underneath, you start responding with wisdom instead of reaction. Reacting fast feels satisfying for a moment. You feel like you've taken control. You spoke your truth, defended yourself, made your point. But often, that rush fades into regret. You replay what you said, how you acted, and you realize you didn't respond. You just reacted. And reacting doesn't solve the problem. It just adds more emotion to it. Understanding, on the other hand, brings peace. It doesn't mean you let things slide or ignore how you feel. It means you give yourself time to see clearly before you act. It means you value clarity over speed. When you slow down and reflect, you start asking yourself better questions. Why did that comment bother me so much? What am I really upset about? Am I hurt, or do I just feel unheard? These questions shift your focus from the surface emotion to the root cause. That's how you build emotional awareness, by being curious about your own reactions instead of judging them. When you understand why you feel something, you gain control over how you express it. You stop saying things you don't mean and doing things you later regret. There's something powerful about not rushing to respond. It gives you space to breathe, think, and choose. Imagine how many arguments could be avoided if people took just 10 seconds to pause before replying. Imagine how much emotional energy you'd save if you stopped reacting to everything instantly. The pause doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. It tells your brain that you're in charge, not your emotions. Most people have been conditioned to believe that reacting fast shows confidence, but confidence is not speed. It's calm. It's the ability to stay centered when things get tense. Anyone can shout, argue, or storm off, but it takes maturity to stay silent for a moment, feel your feelings fully, and then speak with intention. That's the kind of emotional power that builds respect, not just from others, but from yourself. Understanding what you really feel also means being honest with yourself. Sometimes you're not angry at the other person, you're angry at yourself for allowing something. Sometimes you're not hurt because of what someone said, you're hurt because you expected more. When you pause, you start seeing these truths, and once you do, you can deal with the real issue instead of fighting symptoms. You can communicate clearly, set boundaries, or simply let things go. There's a big difference between reaction and response. Reaction is instant and emotional. Response is intentional and thoughtful. Reaction comes from pain. Response comes from understanding. And the only way to move from one to the other is by slowing down. Your emotions aren't your enemy. They're signals. They're trying to tell you something about what matters to you, what you value, and what still hurts. When you rush past them, you miss the message. Think about the last time you got angry or upset. What did you do? Did you take a breath, or did you jump straight into defense? If you reacted, how did it feel afterward? Probably tense, drained, maybe even guilty. But if you've ever paused, really paused, you know that it changes everything. You start seeing the situation from a wider angle. You notice details you would have missed. You realize the person in front of you might be acting from their own pain too. That kind of awareness creates emotional distance between you and your reactions, and that distance is what gives you control. When you understand your emotions, you stop being afraid of them. You stop running from anger, sadness, or fear, because you realize they all have something to teach you. Anger might be asking you to protect your boundaries. Sadness might be asking you to let go. Fear might be asking you to prepare better. When you listen instead of react, emotions stop being overwhelming and start becoming guidance. It's also important to remember that not every feeling requires action. Sometimes you just need to feel it, understand it, and move on. Not every emotion deserves a response, and not every trigger deserves attention. When you understand this,
You save yourself from unnecessary conflict and stress. You learn to pick your battles, not because you're avoiding life, but because you're choosing peace. Slowing down doesn't mean you ignore your emotions. It means you handle them maturely. It means you recognize that how you feel is valid, but how you respond is your responsibility. That's where emotional control comes from, not from suppressing feelings, but from understanding them deeply enough that they no longer control you. There's a calmness that comes when you give yourself permission to pause. It feels like your mind finally catches up to your heart. You breathe, reflect, and then act from clarity instead of chaos. That's when you start noticing changes in your relationships too. You communicate better, listen deeper, and resolve conflicts fast. Because when you stop reacting fast, you create space for understanding, both for yourself and for others. The world around you won't stop testing your emotions. People will still say things that bother you. Situations will still trigger your insecurity. But once you master the pause, you stop letting external events dictate your internal peace. You start owning your reactions. You can look at someone's anger and think, that's their storm, not mine. You can face criticism and say, I'll decide if that's true for me. That's emotional maturity, knowing that you can't control everything around you, but you can control what happens inside you. Over time, this practice changes how you see yourself. You start to feel more grounded, more confident, and less reactive. You realize that your power doesn't come from being loud. It comes from being composed. You start valuing silence over arguments, patience over impulsiveness, and understanding over ego. You stop letting emotions drive your behavior and start letting wisdom guide your choices. Understanding your feelings also helps you heal from past experiences. Many times we react strongly to situations because they remind us of old wounds. Something small in the present touches something deep in the past, and we explode without realizing why. But when you slow down and ask, what am I really feeling? You give yourself a chance to connect the dots. You begin to separate the past from the present. That's how you break emotional cycles, by becoming aware of them. Sometimes understanding what you feel means sitting with discomfort. It's not easy to face sadness, guilt, or fear, but running from them only gives them more power. When you take the time to listen, you realize that emotions pass. They're not permanent. They're messages. Once they've been understood, they fade naturally. You don't have to force them away. You just have to stop fueling them with reaction. Emotional awareness is like turning on a light in a dark room. You stop bumping into things. You stop feeling lost. You can see clearly, and with clarity comes choice. You can choose your words carefully. You can choose when to speak and when to stay silent. You can choose peace over argument. That's how people who seem calm under pressure do it. They've trained themselves to pause and think before reacting. When you practice this daily, even small things change. You stop taking everything personally. You stop letting every comment or inconvenience ruin your mood. You start to see that your peace is valuable, and not every situation deserves to disturb it. You handle stress better, because you no longer meet it with panic. You meet it with understanding. This kind of control doesn't happen overnight. It takes awareness, patience, and repetition. But every time you pause instead of react, you're rewiring your brain. You're teaching it that safety comes from calmness, not chaos. Over time this becomes natural. You stop feeling like your emotions are stronger than you. You become steady, no matter what's happening around you. Understanding your emotions gives you freedom, because once you understand them, they can no longer manipulate you. You don't get pulled into unnecessary drama. You don't waste energy on what doesn't matter. You start living intentionally. You start responding instead of reacting. You start feeling in control, not because life got easier, but because you got wiser. So next time something triggers you, take a breath. Don't rush to speak, to defend, or to fight. Ask yourself, what am I really feeling right now? And wait for the real answer. That one small pause can change everything. It can save relationships, protect your peace, and build your emotional strength. Because in the end, controlling your emotions isn't about being cold. It's about being conscious. It's about knowing yourself well enough to understand that you don't have to react to everything. You just have to respond to what truly matters.
Chapter 5. Practice silence when anger or sadness starts to rise. When anger or sadness begins to rise, most people feel an immediate urge to act. They want to speak, defend themselves, lash out, or distract themselves from the uncomfortable emotion. It feels urgent, almost impossible to ignore. That impulse is strong because emotions carry energy, and our natural instinct is to release it quickly. But responding immediately to rising emotions usually intensifies them rather than resolves them. The first step toward controlling how you feel is practicing silence. Silence doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or pretending they aren't there. It means giving yourself a space to observe what's happening inside before letting it spill into action. When you allow yourself to be silent, you create room for clarity. You notice the physical sensations, your tightened chest, your racing heart, your shallow breath. You feel the energy of the emotion without letting it control your behavior. That awareness is where true control begins. Practicing silence is not passive. It requires discipline and attention. The moment you feel the first stirrings of anger or sadness, pause. Don't speak. Don't move impulsively. Just notice. Name the emotion quietly in your mind. Acknowledge that you're angry, frustrated, or sad. Recognizing the feeling reduces its intensity because it no longer surprises you. It shifts the mind from reactive to aware. You may notice a flood of thoughts trying to justify the emotion or blame someone else. Let them pass without engaging. Your focus is simply to observe. By staying silent, you allow your rational mind to catch up with the emotional one. You give yourself a chance to respond thoughtfully rather than react explosively. Many people underestimate the power of silence. They believe expressing themselves immediately demonstrates strength or honesty. But strength is not always in words or actions. True strength often lies in restraint. Silence gives you time to breathe, to feel, and to make intentional choices. Anger may feel urgent, but it does not need to be expressed in the first instant. Sadness may feel overwhelming, but you don't have to act out of it immediately. When you practice remaining quiet during emotional surges, you gain perspective. You start noticing patterns, what triggers these feelings, how they escalate, and how your body reacts. This knowledge is invaluable because it allows you to anticipate emotional reactions instead of being blindsided by them. During silence, it helps to focus on your breath. Breathing deeply and steadily anchors your awareness in the present moment. Notice the inhale, the exhale, the rise and fall of your chest. Each breath is a reminder that you are alive and that emotions are temporary. They rise and fall like waves, but they do not define you unless you let them. Silence coupled with mindful breathing creates a buffer between emotion and action. That buffer is where emotional control lives. It is also where emotional intelligence begins. The more consistently you practice this pause, the more automatic it becomes. You train your mind to slow down, observe, and respond consciously instead of being swept away. Silence also allows you to separate the intensity of the emotion from the story your mind is telling. When sadness or anger emerges, the mind immediately constructs narratives. This is unfair. I can't believe they did this. I always fail. These stories feed the emotion, making it feel larger than it actually is. By staying silent, you interrupt that cycle. You notice the feeling without immediately reinforcing it with judgment or blame. You create space to ask better questions. Why do I feel this way? What does this emotion want me to understand? Is my response going to help or hurt me? Asking these questions in the midst of silence shifts your attention from reaction to reflection. Another important aspect of practicing silence is allowing emotions to pass naturally.
Many people attempt to suppress anger or sadness because they fear how it will show externally. Suppression, however, often backfires, leading to pent-up energy and eventual outbursts. Silence, on the other hand, doesn't deny the emotion, it contains it. It lets the feeling exist safely, without dictating behavior. When you practice this consistently, you start to notice that emotions rarely last as long as you fear. They rise, peak, and eventually diminish, if not continuously fueled by reactive thoughts or actions. Observing this process strengthens your confidence in your ability to manage emotional waves. In practical terms, silence can be integrated into daily life with simple routines. If you notice tension building in a conversation, pause before responding. If you feel irritation while driving or in line at the store, close your eyes briefly, take a few deep breaths, and stay quiet internally. If you feel sadness triggered by a memory or news, allow yourself to sit with it, breathe through it, and resist the urge to distract yourself immediately. Each of these moments is a training ground for emotional mastery. The more you practice, the more automatic the pause becomes, and the less likely you are to act impulsively under pressure. Silence also has a profound effect on your relationships. When you stop reacting immediately, you stop escalating conflict. You listen better because you are not focused on defending yourself or preparing your rebuttal. You understand others' perspectives more clearly because your mind is calm and attentive. Over time, people notice the difference in how you handle tense situations. Your calm presence becomes a stabilizing force, and your responses carry more weight and thoughtfulness because they are chosen, not driven by impulse. Practicing silence during emotional surges also improves your self-awareness. You start recognizing early warning signs of anger or sadness before they escalate. Maybe your jaw tightens, your chest feels heavy, or your thoughts become repetitive. These are signals that you are beginning to feel emotional pressure. By noticing these signs in silence, you gain early control. You can adjust your posture, slow your breathing, or mentally prepare to respond differently. This anticipatory awareness prevents emotions from taking over and allows you to maintain composure. Many people confuse silence with passivity, but in reality, it is an active practice. It requires courage to remain quiet when emotions are strong, because the mind wants to escape or act. Choosing silence is a demonstration of inner strength. It is a decision to respond rather than react. It is an acknowledgement that your emotions are valid, but they do not control you. This distinction is critical in building long-term emotional resilience. Silence also provides clarity for decision-making. When you allow yourself to feel anger or sadness without immediately acting, you often realize that the impulse to act was driven by temporary emotion rather than rational thought. By waiting, you can make decisions that are aligned with your values, instead of being led by fleeting feeling. This improves your judgment, reduces regret, and increases your confidence in handling future emotional challenges. Over time, practicing silence in the face of rising emotions reshapes your mental habit. You become less reactive to stress, less likely to engage in arguments unnecessarily, and more capable of staying centered when life feels chaotic. Your mind learns to differentiate between what deserves your attention and what doesn't. You start to see that not every emotional surge requires action, and not every conflict requires a response. This shift is transformative because it changes how you experience life daily. Silence also teaches patience and self-compassion. When you allow emotions to rise without forcing them away, you validate your own experience. You treat yourself with respect, acknowledging that feelings are a natural part of being human. You stop criticizing yourself for getting angry or sad, and instead observe with understanding. This compassionate observation reduces internal conflict and promotes mental well-being. Finally, the practice of silence strengthens your long-term emotional control. Each pause builds your capacity to handle future emotional challenges with composure. Each moment of restraint reinforces that you can feel deeply without being ruled by the feeling. Each instance of observing your emotions, rather than reacting, empowers you to live intentionally. Silence is the foundation upon which emotional strength, self-awareness, and resilience are built. By practicing it consistently, you train your mind to stay grounded, your heart to stay balanced, and your actions to reflect wisdom rather than impulse. In every situation where anger or sadness begins to rise, pause, breathe, sit quietly with the feeling, notice it, understand it, and allow it to pass without immediate action. Each moment of silence strengthens your control, sharpens your awareness, and cultivates the emotional stability that allows you to navigate life with confidence, clarity, and calm. The more you embrace this practice, the more powerful and in command of your emotions you become.
Chapter 6. Remind yourself that emotions are signals, not orders to follow. Emotions are a constant part of being human. Every day, without fail, your mind and body produce feelings that pull you in different directions. Sometimes they make you excited, sometimes they make you anxious, angry, or sad. It is easy to assume that these feelings must be acted upon immediately. You might believe that if you feel frustration, you must lash out, or if you feel fear, you must avoid the situation, or if you feel sadness, you must withdraw. But this assumption is a mistake. Emotions are signals, not orders. They provide information about your needs, your boundaries, and your reactions, but they do not dictate the choices you must make. Understanding this distinction is the key to mastering your emotional life. The first step is noticing your emotions clearly as they arise. When you feel tension, irritation, or unease, pause for a moment and label the feeling. Is it anger, disappointment, fear, or sadness? Observing the emotion without judgment gives you a new perspective. You begin to see that the feeling is a reaction to something, not a command that must be followed. Your anger may be signaling that a boundary was crossed, but it does not mean you need to shout, hit, or retaliate. Your fear may signal risk, but it does not require you to freeze completely or abandon your goals. Your sadness may signal loss or unmet need, but it does not require you to give up or spiral into despair. Once you recognize emotions as signals, the next step is to pause and breathe. The simple act of taking slow, deliberate breaths separates the intensity of the emotion from your immediate reactions. Breathing grounds you in the present and gives your rational mind time to engage. During this pause, you can ask yourself what the emotion is communicating. Why am I feeling this way? What is this feeling trying to tell me about my needs or my environment? By translating the emotion into a signal instead of a directive, you regain control over your behavior. It is also essential to understand that emotions fluctuate. They rise and fall naturally, like waves. Just because a feeling is intense in the moment does not mean it will last or that it defines you. Acting impulsively on every surge of emotion often leads to regret and conflict. Learning to treat emotions as signals allows you to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting recklessly. You can honor the message behind the feeling without giving it undue power over your choices. Notice which emotions appear frequently and in which situations. Is anger often triggered by criticism, traffic, or unmet expectations? Does anxiety appear in certain social settings or when facing deadlines? Recognizing these patterns helps you prepare in advance. When you know the triggers, you can anticipate your emotional responses and choose how to act. Instead of being a prisoner to sudden emotional waves, you become a navigator, using the signals to guide your behavior wisely. It is equally important to separate your identity from your emotion. Feeling anger, fear, or sadness does not make you a weak or bad person. Emotions are universal human experiences. Accepting that you will feel strongly at times prevents shame or self-judgment, which only amplifies negative feeling. When you stop identifying with every emotion as a rule you must follow, you create freedom. You allow yourself to feel fully without being controlled. This mental separation is a cornerstone of emotional mastery. Practical exercises help reinforce this approach. When a strong emotion arises, pause and write it down. Describe what you feel, where you feel it in your body, and what triggered it. Then consider what the signal is telling you about your needs or values. Finally, decide how to respond in a way that aligns with your intentions rather than the intensity of the feeling. Practicing this consistently trains your mind to interpret emotions as useful information rather than imperatives. It also helps to rehearse responses in advance. Consider common situations that trigger strong emotions and plan thoughtful reactions. For instance, if someone criticizes your work, acknowledge your initial feeling of frustration, then choose to respond calmly and constructively. If you face a stressful challenge, notice your anxiety, understand its signal about potential risk, and then proceed with a clear plan. Preparing in advance strengthens your ability to recognize emotions as signals and respond with choice rather than impulse. Silence and reflection are powerful allies in this process. When emotions surge, instead of immediately expressing them, create a moment of pause. Observe the sensation, allow it to exist, and reflect on its message. You might notice physical cues, a tight chest, a flushed face, a racing heartbeat. These cues reinforce the idea that emotions are bodily signals. By interpreting these signals consciously, you transform the automaticity of emotional reactions into intentional responses. A critical mindset shift is realizing that responding to emotions thoughtfully is an act of strength. It is not avoidance or weakness. When you resist acting solely based on initial feelings, you exercise control over your behavior, protect relationships, and prevent unnecessary conflict. You become capable of staying composed in difficult conversations, handling criticism constructively, and making decisions aligned with long-term goals instead of temporary feelings. Each time you respond intentionally, you reinforce the habit of seeing emotions as signals rather than orders. Additionally, seek feedback and perspective from others when appropriate. Trusted friends, mentors, or colleagues can provide insight into how your emotions influence your behavior. They can point out patterns you may not notice on your own and validate that your feelings are normal, while helping you separate them from automatic reactions. Using external input supports self-awareness and strengthens your ability to interpret emotional signals accurately. Physical habits also support emotional regulation. Adequate sleep, regular exercise, and healthy nutrition influence how intensely emotions manifest and how quickly you recover. When your body is nourished and rested, your ability to notice signals without being overwhelmed is stronger. Emotional control is not solely mental, it is embodied. Treating your body well creates a stable foundation for interpreting and responding to emotional signals effectively. Mindfulness practices deepen your understanding of emotions as signal. Meditation, focused breathing, and reflective journaling help you observe feelings without judgment and explore their origins. Over time, these practices enhance your ability to detect subtle emotional cues before they escalate. Early recognition allows for deliberate, conscious responses. You build a pattern of pausing, noticing, interpreting, and choosing a cycle that turns emotional signals into tools for wise decision-making rather than sources of impulsive action. Embracing the idea that emotions are signals also promotes resilience. Life will inevitably present challenges, setbacks, and conflicts that stir strong feelings. Viewing these emotions as information rather than directives empowers you to navigate them with composure. You no longer feel trapped by anger, fear,
or disappointment. Instead, you use these feelings to guide learning, problem solving, and personal growth. Emotional resilience emerges because you act with awareness rather than compulsion. Another layer of control involves self-compassion. Accept that experiencing strong emotions is part of being human. Do not criticize yourself for feeling upset or frustrated. Acknowledge the signal, consider its message, and respond with kindness toward yourself. Self-compassion reduces the intensity of negative emotions and increases your capacity to make deliberate choices. You reinforce the understanding that emotions provide information, but you retain ultimate authority over your actions. Over time, interpreting emotions as signals rather than orders transforms your daily life. Decisions become clearer because you no longer react impulsively. Relationships improve because your responses are intentional rather than reactive. Stress diminishes because you are not constantly driven by the volatility of your feelings. You experience freedom, clarity, and confidence. You understand that emotions provide essential guidance, but you are the one who chooses how to act. Finally, practicing this principle consistently builds mental strength and emotional intelligence. Every instance where you pause, observe, and interpret your emotions reinforces your mastery over them. You become less reactive, more thoughtful, and more capable of handling complex situations without being swept away. Emotional signals no longer dictate your behavior, they inform your choices. You transform potential vulnerability into deliberate power. Understanding that emotions are signals, not orders, is foundational to emotional control. It gives you the ability to navigate life intentionally, to respond instead of react, and to use your feelings as a compass rather than a cage. Each moment of awareness, reflection, and conscious response strengthens your capacity to live with balance, confidence, and wisdom. By practicing this consistently, you train your mind to recognize the message behind every emotion, to honor the feeling without being compelled by it, and to act with clarity and choice in every situation. In every scenario where intense feelings arise, pause and acknowledge the emotion. Notice what it communicates about your needs, values, or environment. Observe without judgment. Reflect and decide on an intentional response. Over time, these actions accumulate into a habit of emotional mastery. The more you embrace this practice, the more you free yourself from impulsive reactions and gain consistent control over your emotional life. You build the ability to navigate challenges, maintain perspective, and respond with thoughtfulness in every circumstance. This is how emotions transform from overwhelming forces into signals, guiding purposeful action.
Chapter 7. Focus on facts before your feelings make decisions for you. Emotions have a way of clouding judgment if you allow them to. They rise quickly, and without conscious thought, they can push you into decisions that later lead to regret. It is common to feel urgency in a situation and assume that immediate action is required, but acting purely on emotion is rarely the best choice. Instead, focusing on facts before letting feelings dictate your decisions allows for clarity, control, and more consistent results. Facts provide an anchor. They ground you in reality, while emotions can exaggerate situations, magnify threats, and distort perception. Understanding the difference between what is objectively happening and what you feel about it is essential for mastering your emotional life and making sound choices. The first step in prioritizing facts is observation. When a strong emotion arises, step back mentally and identify what is actually true in the situation. What happened? What can be confirmed through evidence? What is opinion or assumption? Separating objective reality from interpretation allows you to see the situation more clearly. For instance, if someone criticizes your work, the fact might be that a specific point in your report was questioned. Your feelings might amplify this into a narrative of failure, rejection, or inadequacy, but the facts show only that a single point was addressed. By focusing on the actual details, you remove the unnecessary weight added by emotional reaction. Next, develop the habit of questioning your initial response. Strong emotions often create automatic judgments. Ask yourself what evidence supports your reaction and what evidence contradicts it. Is there proof that the situation is truly negative or threatening? Are you assuming the worst based on past experiences or fears rather than the present facts? This process interrupts the immediate chain reaction of emotional decisions and introduces reason into the moment. The more consistently you practice this, the more automatic it becomes to pause and evaluate reality before responding. It is also vital to slow down your responses. When feelings are high, the mind often seeks quick resolution. Taking a pause, even a few deep breaths, provides space for rational thought. During this pause, list what is known for certain and what is uncertain. Facts are tangible, observable, or verifiable elements of the situation. Uncertainty, assumptions, and projections are separate. When you differentiate between them, you reduce the chance of acting impulsively. You make decisions based on evidence, not the intensity of your emotions. Another practical strategy is documenting information. Writing down the facts of the situation can help solidify clarity. Often when emotions are strong, the mind exaggerates or distorts events. Putting the situation into words allows you to see patterns, separate what is true from what is imagined, and weigh the real elements against emotional impression. This method also provides a reference point when emotions subside, allowing you to revisit the situation with objectivity. Context is critical when focusing on facts. Consider the broader picture. How does this situation compare with others you have experienced? How significant are the facts in the larger scope of your goals and values? Emotions tend to prioritize immediate discomfort, while facts allow for long-term evaluation. By integrating context, you ensure that decisions are not disproportionately influenced by temporary feelings, but are aligned with your larger intentions. Fact-based thinking also involves recognizing bias in your own mind. Everyone interprets events through personal experiences, beliefs, and past disappointments. Emotional reactions are often amplified by these biases. By examining facts critically and acknowledging your own tendencies to overreact or misinterpret, you increase self-awareness and reduce the influence of distorted perceptions. Ask yourself whether your emotional response is proportional to the actual facts or inflated by previous experience. Another key practice is separating people's behavior from your interpretation of it. Emotions often color interactions, leading you to assume intent or meaning that may not exist. For example, if a colleague does not respond to an email promptly, your feelings might interpret this as disrespect or disregard. However, facts may show that they were simply busy or overlooked the message. Understanding the difference between observable behavior and emotional interpretation prevents misjudgment and conflict. When making decisions, apply a simple checklist. First, identify the emotion. Second, determine the factual elements of the situation. Third, assess options based on these facts. Finally, decide on the action that best aligns with the truth rather than the initial emotional reaction. This structured approach ensures consistency, reduces impulsivity, and builds confidence in your decision-making process. It is also important to practice empathy alongside fact-based thinking. Facts are essential, but human behavior often includes emotions and intentions that may not be immediately obvious. Observing facts while considering others' perspectives helps you respond effectively without letting your own feelings dominate. Balancing objectivity with empathy allows for wiser interactions, better conflict resolution, and improved relationships. Developing this skill requires repetition and commitment. Begin with small decisions and everyday situations. Notice when your emotions push you toward a reaction. Pause, identify the facts, and then choose your response. Over time, this habit extends to larger, more consequential decisions. The brain gradually learns to recognize emotional impulses, separate them from factual reality, and make choices that serve long-term goals and well-being. Practical exercises further reinforce this ability. Keep a journal of emotionally charged situations. Note the initial feelings, the facts of the situation, your response and the outcome. Review these entries regularly to identify patterns and improvement areas. This reflection enhances awareness and strengthens your capacity to prioritize facts over emotional impulses. Another method is to verbalize the facts aloud when emotions are high. Speaking them helps externalize the situation and reduces the intensity of internal emotional pressure. This technique reinforces clarity, reduces overthinking, and establishes a habit of responding to evidence rather than the strength of feeling. Over time, your mind becomes trained to seek truth first, and emotion second. Recognize that focusing on facts does not mean suppressing emotion. Emotions provide valuable information about your needs, values, and boundaries. The goal is not to ignore them, but to prevent them from making decisions automatically. Use your emotions as guides, but let facts dictate the strategy. For instance, fear may signal risk, but the facts determine the appropriate action to mitigate that risk. Frustration may highlight a problem, but the facts show the steps to resolve it. Additionally, set up an environment that supports fact-based decision-making. Surround yourself with accurate information, avoid rumor or hearsay, and consult reliable sources when possible. Remove distractions that amplify emotional reactions. Clear information and structured environments reduce misinterpretation and impulsivity. When emotions are intense, physical cues can guide your process. Notice increased heart rate, tightness in the chest, or rapid breathing. These signals indicate that your emotional brain is active. Use them as a reminder to pause and refocus on facts. Incorporating breathing exercises or short mental breaks strengthens the connection between awareness and fact-based evaluation. Another critical element is understanding consequences. Acting solely on emotion often leads to regret, broken relationships, or missed opportunity. Considering facts allows you to project possible outcomes logically. Evaluate what is likely to happen based on evidence rather than feeling. This foresight prevents hasty actions and fosters strategic thinking. Collaborating with others can also reinforce fact-based decision-making. Seek input from trusted colleagues, friends, or mentors who can provide an objective perspective. When emotions are high, your perception may be skewed. A second opinion anchored in facts provides validation, highlights blind spots, and encourages thoughtful responses. Consistency in this practice gradually rewires your approach to challenges. You begin to notice emotional impulses immediately, separate them from reality, and act deliberately. Decisions become more aligned with your objectives, less reactive, and more stable. This transformation increases confidence, reduces stress, and strengthens resilience. Ultimately, focusing on facts before your feelings make decisions for you allows you to reclaim control of your life. You stop being driven by fleeting emotions and start making informed, intentional choices. You learn to interpret emotions as signals rather than mandates. Over time, this skill becomes automatic, improving every aspect of your personal and professional life. By practicing awareness, pausing, analyzing facts, consulting others, and reflecting on outcomes, you create a habit of thoughtful decision-making. Emotions retain their value as indicators of needs and priorities, but they no longer dictate your behavior. You build mental clarity, emotional balance, and the ability to navigate challenges with precision. In every moment,
Your mind becomes a tool for careful evaluation rather than a reactive force, and your choices become consistent, rational, and empowering. When you consistently focus on facts before feelings, your relationships improve because you respond instead of react. Your career benefits because decisions are grounded in reality, not transient impulses. Your personal growth accelerates because you learn from outcomes rather than being trapped by emotional extremes. Over time, your life reflects the clarity and stability that come from separating fact from emotion. In the long term, this practice develops mental strength. The more you rely on facts, the less power fleeting emotions hold. You become capable of handling high-pressure situations, resolving conflicts efficiently, and making sound judgment. Emotional impulses no longer control your trajectory. They inform your awareness, while you retain authority over your actions. This is the foundation of emotional intelligence, resilience, and effective decision-making. By treating emotions as data points and facts as directives, you gain mastery over your mind. Each situation handled this way reinforces the habit. Each conscious pause and evaluation strengthens your ability to act rationally, thoughtfully, and strategically. The combination of emotional awareness and factual assessment transforms the way you live, communicate, and perform in every area of life.
Chapter 8. Accept that not every emotion deserves your full attention. Emotions arrive constantly. Some are fleeting and others linger, but not all of them demand your attention. Recognizing which emotions require focus and which can be acknowledged and released is a crucial skill in controlling your emotional life. Most people treat every feeling as urgent and important, and that mindset creates unnecessary stress, distraction, and poor decisions. Learning to reluctantly give attention to emotions allows you to conserve energy, maintain focus, and act with intention rather than reactivity. This is not about ignoring feelings or pretending they do not exist. Emotions carry information about your environment, needs, and values, but the intensity of the feeling does not automatically indicate that action is required. Understanding this distinction changes the way you experience and respond to life. The first step is awareness. Begin noticing the emotions that arise throughout your day. Pay attention to their intensity, duration, and triggers. Are these feelings pointing to an immediate need, or are they transient reactions to minor events? Recognize that many emotional responses are automatic, rooted in habit, expectation, or prior experiences. Not every anger, sadness, or anxiety has a root in the present moment or deserves prolonged attention. Identifying these patterns is the foundation of emotional control. You begin to see that emotions are tools, not commands. Next, practice naming emotions as they appear. Labeling feelings accurately reduces their unconscious influence. For instance, identifying that a quick surge of irritation is a reaction to being rushed, rather than a fundamental problem, helps you decide how to respond. Simply stating internally, "This is annoyance," separates the feeling from immediate action. Naming emotions creates a mental pause. That pause is your space to evaluate whether the emotion requires further attention or action, or whether it can be observed and released. Once awareness is established, evaluate relevance. Ask yourself if the emotion is useful for your current priorities and goals. Does it provide guidance or merely a distraction? Some feelings are signals to change, reflect, or communicate. Others are echoes of past experiences, projections, or trivial frustrations. Distinguishing between useful and irrelevant emotions allows you to focus on what truly matters. This selective attention prevents emotional exhaustion and ensures that your energy is directed purposefully. Another critical step is practicing boundaries with your emotions. Just as you would not give complete authority over your actions to random advice from strangers, do not give unrestricted authority to every feeling. You can feel an emotion without letting it dictate behavior. Accept its presence, acknowledge it without judgment, and then decide whether it warrants a response. This approach strengthens emotional resilience and helps maintain composure even in high-pressure situations. When an emotion surfaces, breathe deeply, notice it, and consider its relevance. This practice interrupts automatic reactions. Over time, your mind learns to filter emotional signals, giving more attention to those that matter and letting minor or irrelevant feelings pass without disturbance. This deliberate focus enhances both decision-making and mental clarity. You are no longer ruled by constant emotional fluctuations, but are instead guided by intentional evaluation. Reflection is also vital. After emotionally charged moments, review which emotions captured your attention and whether that focus was productive. Ask whether any feelings dominated unnecessarily or caused a disproportionate reaction. Through reflection, you learn to calibrate your emotional attention over time. Patterns emerge that reveal which triggers consistently generate unproductive responses and which emotions reliably inform wise action. It is equally important to integrate physical awareness. Emotions often manifest as physical sensations, tension, tightness, racing heartbeat, or shallow breathing. These cues indicate the presence of emotion, but do not automatically necessitate engagement. By recognizing physical signals without immediate response, you allow the body to inform the mind without overwhelming decision-making processes. Controlled breathing, brief pauses, or mental counting can help reduce unnecessary engagement with fleeting feeling. The goal is to observe without letting the body hijack thought processes. Practice prioritization of emotional energy. Understand that attention is finite. When you give disproportionate focus to minor irritations, fleeting anxieties, or trivial sadness, you deplete resources needed for meaningful challenges. Choosing which emotions to prioritize is a strategic act. Reserve your focus for feelings that signal important needs, ethical considerations, or situations requiring immediate action. This selective attention is a skill that separates reactive living from intentional living. Another strategy is cognitive reframing. Not every emotion requires suppression, but shifting perspective can reduce its perceived urgency. Viewing minor frustrations as information rather than crises diminishes their emotional power. Recognize that emotions are temporary, and their intensity does not necessarily justify an all-consuming response. This approach trains the mind to differentiate between important emotional signals and passing disturbances. Social context plays a role as well. Interpersonal interactions can trigger emotions that are not inherently significant, but become amplified due to social dynamics. Observing emotions within context allows you to assess whether the response is warranted or a projection of assumptions and expectations. This conscious evaluation prevents unnecessary conflict and emotional energy waste. Intentional distraction can also be used strategically. When confronted with minor emotions that are persistent but irrelevant, shifting focus to tasks, goals, or neutral activities can help the mind release unnecessary attention. This is not avoidance, it is conscious allocation of attention. By redirecting focus, you maintain productivity, reduce stress, and enhance mental clarity. The mind learns that not every emotion deserves engagement. Self-compassion supports this process. Accepting that you feel numerous emotions daily is normal. Avoid criticizing yourself for experiencing emotions that are minor or fleeting. Self-compassion reduces the tendency to ruminate on trivial feelings and allows for more balanced attention allocation. This attitude fosters mental resilience, emotional stability, and a healthier relationship with yourself. Developing routines also aids control. Regular mindfulness, journaling, or check-ins with your own state of mind provide structured opportunities to observe emotions without immediate engagement. These routines make selective emotional attention habitual rather than conscious,
and exhausting. With consistent practice, the ability to accept some emotions lightly while responding appropriately to others becomes automatic. Understanding consequences reinforces this skill. Over-focusing on minor emotions can lead to regret, stress, and decreased effectiveness in personal and professional life. Recognizing the cost of excessive engagement motivates disciplined emotional attention. Conversely, responding thoughtfully to significant emotions enhances decision-making, relationships, and overall well-being. Over time, this practice cultivates mental clarity. When only relevant emotions command attention, distractions diminish. You retain energy for productive problem-solving, meaningful interactions, and intentional action. You gain mastery over internal experience, ensuring that emotions inform but do not dictate behavior. Life becomes less reactive and more purposeful. This skill also improves interpersonal dynamics. Others respond to emotional stability with trust and confidence. When you do not overreact to minor provocations, relationships strengthen, communication becomes clearer, and your ability to resolve conflicts improves. Emotional self-control enhances not only personal well-being, but also social and professional influence. It is essential to integrate patience. Training yourself to selectively attend to emotions is a process. Mistakes will occur. Emotions will occasionally hijack responses, and lapses are normal. Patience with yourself ensures consistent practice and long-term growth. Every successful evaluation of emotional relevance reinforces the habit, while every misstep provides learning opportunities. Finally, recognize that this skill is empowering. Accepting that not every emotion deserves your full attention frees the mind from unnecessary turmoil. You reclaim mental space for strategic thinking, creativity, and focus on priorities. Your daily experience becomes calmer, more controlled, and purposeful. Emotional signals continue to inform, but you act with clarity, wisdom, and intentionality. By consistently observing, labeling, evaluating, and prioritizing emotional attention, you establish a pattern of control. You transform the way you experience life, reduce impulsive reactions, and maintain energy for what truly matters. Emotions remain an essential part of human experience, but you no longer serve them blindly. You choose where to focus, when to act, and how to maintain stability, confidence, and clarity in every situation.
Chapter 9. Calm your body first so your mind can think clearly. Your body and mind are deeply connected. When emotions spike, your body reacts first. Heart races, muscles tense, breathing quickens. These physical reactions are signals, and if left unchecked, they can hijack your thinking. Emotional control begins with calming your body so that your mind can regain clarity. Most people try to reason with themselves while their body is in turmoil, and that rarely works. Physical tension clouds judgment, amplifies anxiety, and makes rational thinking almost impossible. Understanding this connection is the first step toward mastering your emotional responses and making better decisions under pressure. Start by noticing your body's responses when emotions rise. Are your shoulders tight? Is your chest heavy? Is your stomach churning? These sensations are immediate indicators of stress or emotional escalation. Instead of ignoring or resisting them, acknowledge their presence. Awareness allows you to interrupt the automatic cycle where your body triggers impulsive reactions. By focusing first on physical state, you give your mind the space it needs to process reality accurately, rather than being dominated by reactive impulses. Breathing is one of the most effective tools to calm the body. Deep, controlled breaths signal to your nervous system that it can relax. Inhale slowly through the nose, hold briefly, then exhale slowly through the mouth. Repeating this pattern several times reduces heart rate, eases muscle tension, and decreases the intensity of emotional reactions. When your breathing is steady, your mind begins to mirror that calmness. This simple practice grounds you in the present moment, shifting focus from the emotional surge to measured response. Muscle relaxation complements breathing exercises. Consciously relaxing your shoulders, jaw and hands releases physical tension that often fuels emotional intensity. Progressive muscle relaxation, where you tense and release different muscle groups, creates awareness of stress accumulation in the body. When tension is released, you feel lighter and more in control. The mind is then free to engage in problem solving, rather than being consumed by reactive emotions. This practice also trains your nervous system to respond more calmly in future stressful situations. Movement is another practical tool. A short walk, stretching, or gentle physical activity disperses adrenaline and restores balance to the body. Physical motion reduces anxiety, releases endorphins, and provides a break from emotional escalation. When the body's energy is managed, mental clarity improves. The mind is no longer trapped in a feedback loop of heightened arousal and impulsive reactions. Movement allows a mental reset, giving space for thoughtful responses instead of automatic emotional reactions. Mindful attention to bodily sensations deepens this control. Notice heart rate, muscle tightness, or breath patterns without judgment. Observing the body objectively reduces identification with the emotion itself. You begin to see that the emotion exists in the body and mind, but does not define your action. This separation between sensation and behavior empowers decision-making. The more consistently you observe your physical state, the faster you can intervene before emotions dominate your responses. Grounding techniques help stabilize the body and mind simultaneously. Focus on sensory experiences. Feel the floor beneath your feet, notice ambient sounds, or pay attention to textures around you. These sensations anchor you in the present and reduce rumination. The mind stops spiraling on emotional narratives and begins to process the situation as it truly is. Grounding restores clarity by creating a mental environment where logical thought and emotional regulation can coexist. Hydration, nutrition, and sleep also affect bodily and mental clarity. When the body is depleted or fatigued, emotional reactions intensify and cognitive processing slows. Maintaining physical health supports emotional resilience. Small habits like drinking water, eating balanced meals, and ensuring adequate rest enhance the ability to stay calm under pressure. The body's stability provides the foundation for mental clarity and rational action. Emotional mastery is not purely psychological, it is deeply rooted in physical well-being. Visualization techniques reinforce calmness. Imagine a state of relaxation spreading through your body, starting from the feet and moving upward. Picture muscles loosening, tension melting, and breath flowing freely. Visualization prepares the body for calm response and signals the mind that it can function with clarity. When combined with breathing and mindfulness, visualization accelerates emotional regulation and reinforces the habit of calming the body before reacting. Practice is essential. Every time emotions rise, intentionally calm the body first. Over time, this becomes automatic. Your nervous system learns that heightened emotion does not require immediate action. The body calms more quickly, and the mind engages with the situation thoughtfully. This repeated practice builds resilience, allowing you to navigate challenges without being overwhelmed by emotional surges. Consistency transforms initial effort into second nature. Integrating this approach into daily life improves overall mental and emotional stability. Begin each day with brief exercises to center the body, deep breathing, light stretching, or mindful observation of bodily sensation. These routines prime your body and mind to remain composed throughout the day. When unexpected stress arises, the mind naturally accesses a calm state more quickly. Emotional control becomes habitual rather than forced, and decision-making improves dramatically.
When difficult situations arise, the sequence becomes notice the physical response, engage in calming techniques, and then assess the situation logically. This order ensures the mind has full cognitive capacity to evaluate choices, predict consequences, and select optimal action. Attempting to reason before calming the body often leads to poor judgment and impulsive decisions. Prioritizing physical calmness is the key to mental clarity and emotional control. Social interactions also benefit from this practice. In heated conversations, calming the body first prevents emotional reactions that can escalate conflict. Taking a breath, loosening tension, or subtly adjusting posture before responding allows communication from a composed mindset. Others respond to your calm presence with respect and cooperation, reducing misunderstandings and promoting productive dialogue. Emotional regulation begins in the body, and this extends into relationships, influence, and leadership effectiveness. Calming the body first also enhances problem-solving abilities. When emotions are overwhelming, the mind fixates on perceived threats or negative outcomes. By releasing physical tension, mental flexibility returns. Creativity, critical thinking, and solution-focused behavior improve. Challenges feel manageable rather than insurmountable, and the ability to act strategically rather than reactively strengthens. Emotional energy is preserved and directed toward productive outcomes. The process of calming the body before thinking creates a feedback loop of emotional mastery. Each successful intervention reinforces the brain-body connection, making subsequent emotional regulation easier and faster. Over time, you develop an internal system that automatically recognizes bodily cues, engages calming techniques, and restores mental clarity. This system allows you to navigate life with less stress, better decision-making, and increased resilience. Consistency and awareness are vital. Regularly practice calming techniques even when emotions are mild. This trains the body and mind to remain composed in high-stress scenarios. Anticipate emotional triggers and prepare the body to respond with calmness. As you integrate these practices, emotional upheavals lose their power to control behavior. You gain control over responses, enhancing both personal and professional. In conclusion, emotional mastery begins with the body. By recognizing physical cues, engaging in breathing exercises, releasing tension, moving intentionally, and practicing mindfulness, you create the conditions for a clear mind. Mental clarity follows physical calmness, allowing rational, measured, and effective action. Controlling emotions is not about suppressing feelings. It is about prioritizing bodily regulation so that the mind can respond thoughtfully. With consistent practice, the body becomes a stabilizing force, and the mind gains the capacity to think clearly, act intentionally, and navigate life with confidence and composure. This approach ensures that emotions inform rather than dominate decisions, creating a life of calm, focus, and resilience.
Chapter 10. Teach your mind that peace is a stronger response than anger. Your response to situations is a choice, and choosing peace over anger changes everything. When you react in anger, decisions become clouded, relationships get strained, and opportunities for growth vanish. Peace is not weakness, it is strength that comes from clarity and self-control. Teaching your mind that peace is more powerful than anger begins with awareness of triggers. Notice when irritation, frustration, or resentment starts to rise. Observe the sensations in your body, the tightening of your jaw, the heat in your face, the quickened pulse. These signals are early warnings that anger is forming. By recognizing these signs early, you create a window to intervene before your mind and actions are hijacked by reactive impulses. Once aware of these triggers, pause intentionally. Slow your breathing, release tension in your shoulders, and center your focus on the present moment. Shifting attention from the emotional surge to deliberate calmness allows your rational mind to engage. This pause disrupts the automatic cycle where anger escalates uncontrollably. Each pause reinforces your ability to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Reflect on the consequences of angry responses. Recall situations where anger caused regret, strained connections, or poor decisions. Contrast these with moments where calmness produced clarity, collaboration, and constructive outcomes. Understanding the tangible benefits of peace strengthens motivation to respond differently. The mind begins to internalize that patience, calm reasoning, and measured reactions create better results than immediate emotional retaliation. Next, intentionally practice reframing your thoughts during moments of provocation. Instead of interpreting actions as personal attacks, view them as neutral events or opportunities to understand perspectives. Shifting perception diminishes the intensity of the emotional response. Repeatedly practicing this reframing trains neural pathways, making calm, measured responses more habitual. Your mind begins to associate challenging circumstances with problem-solving and composure rather than anger and conflict. Visualization strengthens this training. Imagine a stressful interaction and picture yourself responding with calm and clarity. Sense the relief, respect, and positive outcomes that arise from maintaining peace. Engage your body in this visualization. Feel relaxed muscles, steady breath, and a stable heartbeat. The more vividly you imagine responding with peace, the more your mind prepares for real-life application. Mental rehearsal programs your responses and reduces impulsive reactions under pressure. Developing supportive habits reinforces this mindset. Daily mindfulness, meditation, and reflective journaling cultivate self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Record moments where anger arose and note how choosing calm could have changed outcome. Analyze patterns, identify triggers, and create strategies for managing similar situations in the future. This structured approach teaches the mind to anticipate challenges and respond with peace as a default mode. Language shapes emotional responses. Sip to yourself with words that reinforce composure and self-control. Replace thoughts like, "I can't tolerate this," with "I can handle this calmly and wisely." Internal dialogue influences both mind and body. By repeatedly using language that prioritizes peace, you strengthen neural connections that support measured, composed responses over reactive anger. Breathing techniques enhance the body's capacity to support peace. Deep, slow breaths reduce adrenaline and cortisol levels, lower heart rate, and relax muscles. Combining breath control with mindful observation of rising anger creates a physiological foundation for calm. The body and mind work together. When the body signals relaxation, the mind becomes more capable of rational thought, reinforcing the choice to respond with peace. Physical posture affects emotional regulation. Standing or sitting in a relaxed, upright position communicates calmness to the mind. Avoid clenching fists, hunching shoulders, or tensing facial muscles, as these amplify anger responses. Intentional adjustment of posture sends feedback to the brain, supporting the cultivation of peace. Over time, posture, breath, and mindful awareness become automatic cues that reinforce calm reactions. Forgiveness is a critical component. Holding on to resentment fuels anger and erodes mental stability. Choose to release grudges and negative judgments when possible. Forgiveness does not mean condoning actions, but freeing your mind from unnecessary conflict. Releasing resentment cultivates mental clarity, reduces stress, and strengthens the habit of responding with peace rather than anger. Empathy amplifies the power of peaceful responses. Attempt to understand others' perspectives, even when challenging.
Recognizing that everyone has struggles, motivations, and limitations shifts the focus from personal offense to broader understanding. This perspective reduces emotional escalation and promotes thoughtful, composed reaction. Your mind begins to see peace as a natural, beneficial response in social interactions. Practicing gratitude helps maintain emotional balance. When irritated or provoked, recalling elements of life you value can reduce the intensity of anger. Gratitude shifts focus from perceived threats to positive aspects of life, creating space for peace. Repeated engagement in gratitude exercises reinforces the brain's ability to prioritize calm over reactive anger. Set clear boundaries to protect your emotional state. Recognize situations or people that consistently trigger unnecessary anger. While peace is a choice, proactive boundary setting prevents repeated exposure to harmful stimuli. Maintaining boundaries teaches your mind that preserving calm is both possible and desirable, enhancing confidence in peaceful responses. Accountability strengthens consistency. Share your intention to prioritize peace with trusted friends or mentors. Discuss strategies for remaining composed under stress. Regular reflection and feedback reinforce the habit and provide external support, making peaceful responses more reliable in challenging moments. Over time, these practices transform neural pathways. The mind learns that calmness produces better results than anger. The physical sensations of rising anger become cues to engage in deliberate practices, breathing, mindfulness, reframing, and reflection. Gradually, responding with peace becomes the default rather than an exception. Neural plasticity supports this behavioral shift, embedding emotional resilience into daily life. Daily routines reinforce the skill, start and end each day with intentional reflection, observing moments of anger or frustration, and noting how calmness could have changed outcome. This continuous self-monitoring cultivates awareness and strengthens the mental habit of choosing peace. Morning intention setting primes the mind to respond with composure, while evening reflection consolidates learning from the day's experiences. In high-stakes or emotionally charged situations, the sequence is simple. Recognize rising anger, engage calming techniques, reframe thoughts, adjust posture and breath, and respond thoughtfully. Following this structured approach ensures emotions inform rather than dictate decisions. The power of peace becomes evident through clearer thinking, better relationships, and improved decision-making. Celebrate successes. Each time you choose peace over anger, reinforce it mentally. Acknowledge your self-control, reflect on improved outcomes, and use this as motivation for future challenges. Positive reinforcement strengthens the habit and builds confidence in your capacity to respond effectively under pressure. Ultimately, teaching your mind that peace is stronger than anger requires commitment, awareness, and repetition. By consistently practicing these strategies, you develop the ability to respond with composure, clarity, and wisdom regardless of external provocation. Peace is an active choice, supported by intentional physical, mental, and emotional practices. Choosing peace over anger empowers the mind, enhances relationships, strengthens resilience, and creates a life led by thoughtful action rather than reactive emotion. Consistent effort ensures that your responses become automatic. Your mind and body learn that peace is not only possible, but preferable. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to reinforce this habit. Over time, emotional intelligence strengthens, reactions are measured, and your overall sense of control and satisfaction increases. Peace becomes your default response, anger loses power, and your life is guided by clarity, calm, and purposeful decision-making.